Konami has a pretty bad track record of releasing TCG archetypes with a lot of potential in their first wave, and then ignoring them and giving them a bunch of garbage in the second wave. And now Ashened is in that position. We recently got the second wave of support from Legacy Destruction, and in our last video we looked at how Wave 1 shaped the deck and what it would need in order to be a Tier 1 potential. So now that we have the support, where does the deck stand? Do I think it has a chance of being good? And how does it fare right now? In Legacy Destruction we got 7 new cards, 2 monsters, 2 fusion monsters, 2 spells, and 1 trap card. It was a bit awkward for Ashen to pivot into a fusion strategy because it's not something that you would have expected in the first wave. And this immediately had me concerned. It reminded me of something like Testina, where out of nowhere they've gotten this Exceed monster and a bunch of other random gimmicks that really didn't seem to line up with the initial core values of the deck. But there was some good news. The most important card released was Extinguishing the Ashened. It's important to note it has Ashened in the name. And why does that matter? Well, it can send 1 dark power from deck to the grave and then add a level 5 or higher power from graveyard to your hand. This locks you into Pyros, but it doesn't matter if you're playing a pure Ashen deck. You can banish it from the grave to fusion summon a Pyro as well, so that's where the fusion summoning comes in. But this matters because this could send Vados from deck to grave and then add it to hand. So this essentially acted as a reinforcement of the army for Vados, where otherwise you don't have access to it. But this is also important, not only because we got 3 more copies of Vados and make the deck more consistent, we also have a way to get Vados via Priestess, because Priestess could search Extinguished, and then Extinguished could get Vados. Another important card that the Ashen theme got is Shaman of the Ashen City. Like the other monsters from last set, if Obsidian is on the field, you special this card from the hand. But then, you can once per turn target 3 Pyros that are banished from your grave and put them back in your deck. Afterwards, if an Ashen is one of those monsters, you get to add an Obsidian from deck to hand. So this filled a role that I mentioned in the last video. Now, in the last video, I talked about more ways to Vados and getting that deck more connected, and Extinguished did that, and then I also wanted something to recycle while also getting a little bit further, and also potentially level 4, that where you can make Banshee, and that is really what Shaman is. Now, it's not anything brilliant because it's not going to be an immediate use on the first turn, at least most of the time, but it's good for recycling your plays, getting you some advantage, and also being level 4 to make Banshee plays. And then, the more I thought about it, I kept thinking about these fusion monsters and the new trap card that enables the fusion, Ashen to Endlessness, it actually kind of lined up with what the deck tried to do decently. Think about Ashen in this way. Vados is your supreme monster. That is the card you want to be using over and over and over again. The deck has a decent ability to cycle it, but what we want to be doing at every turn is trying to trigger our Vados, erupt our Volcano, and then reset up the Vados to do it again on the next turn, all while progressing either our ability to chip damage, a card advantage, or suffocating their resources. And Vados helps with that in several ways because it gives you access to the trap cards, which will increase your card advantage. Those trap cards will also help you push up damage, as well as Vados nuking their field will hinder their game plan and take away their card resources. And the fusion may not intuitively have helped that much, but Ashen Endlessness does advance this game plan of making Vados easier to trigger on both players' turns to nuke the field, because now you're not completely reliant on just Hero of the Ashen to pop. You also have more ability to keep setting up the Vados because Embers of the Ashen let you add back a field spell. This means you can recycle the Obsidian without requiring your Hero of the Ashen City to trigger. This ensures that you could keep a cycle where every turn you're erupting your Vados, nuking the field, and setting up another eruption for the next turn. And once you get them in this spot, this is where you want this deck to be. Another thing I was looking for with the last wave of support was a way to use King of the Ashen City in a meaningful manner. Before, without links, if you were locked into Pyros, summoning it didn't do much besides provide some extra damage. And summoning Priestess from the deck when you could have already searched it really didn't accomplish too much. But now, the fusions actually fixed this somewhat, and while it didn't click with me immediately because it's not a link monster, giving a material of King that extra body does matter, because it means you're not necessarily burning your resources to make Embers. Haha, pun. But with an efficient access to Embers, there are now clear lines, like King into Priestess into Extinguished would get you back the Vados, then fuse the 2 on field for Embers, add back the Obsidian, you now reset up your field spell and your Vados. There are other neat tools that Ashen got in this wave too that we've absolutely incorporated into our deck. But those were the highlights that kind of brought the theme more and more together. These 3 Ashen cards are the highlight of LEDE for me. The other Ashen cards in the set are okay, and we will incorporate them into our deck, but these 3 are the ones that really push the game plan for this deck forward, and I'm super happy to exist. Now, with all that in mind, it's time for me to cook up a brew for the deck to take to locals. If you enjoy seeing me take on challenges with new decks that aren't super explored, trying to figure out how to play them correctly and how to build them correctly, then please like, subscribe, leave a comment down below on what you want to see me play next. First things first, you know what we got to do. we have to grab our pack of Supreme Pros. And if you want some for yourself, go check out tsx1.com and use the code POTATO10 for 10% off. As I'm adapting the deck from the last wave to this wave, there's a few things I still want to keep in mind. This deck's kill power from scratch is still kind of shaky. You can get there uninterrupted, but it's unlikely those game states really happen. So trying to build this like a combo deck is inappropriate, and I think that much hasn't changed. I still think Vados is the most insane card in this deck. It is incredibly powerful, and pairing Vados with hand traps is very strong. It's something that I really liked on my last Ashen deck, so it's something I want to do right now, and that means when I'm adding new cards, I have to be careful not to take off too much non-engine, because then I feel like the Ashen deck wouldn't be as powerful. I'm thinking about what to take out. I played Aratama and Sakitama before as a way to access my Pyro monsters more readily, but with new ways to search that are more efficient, I think I can remove these from my deck. I've elected to go down, buy a single copy of Bonfire in this deck because it's become increasingly evident it's not super important for this card. And with more and more ways to access your deck, the Ashen theme is somewhat self-contained. You don't need too many other searchers, otherwise you have a lot of redundancy. And because everything is once per turn, it's not super important to see a hand full of Ashen cards. In fact, I'd argue it's just bad. Now, given that I wanted to restrict the number of non-engine I was removing from the deck, I did elect not to play Spearhead of the Ashen City. This is the only new Ashen card, or only Ashen card in period, that is not in my deck. I thought it was one of the weakest, so let's go over it real quick. Just like the other Ashen monsters, if Obsidian is on the field, you can special summon it. And then, if your opponent controls a 2800 or more attack mode monster, you contribute it to the targeted card your opponent controls and return to the hand. So the idea here is it can recycle Vados in some sort of way, but there are other ways to do that. And removing Vados from the field will also mean you lose the ability to nuke it during your opponent's turn, or fuse with it, as well as it'll remove the benefit of giving your opponent a monster that turns off effects like Cashier effects or Ostinato, which are both relatively powerful in the current format. Thus, I decided this niche ability that really isn't super useful in that many game states, while also not being a starter or good in the long game, meant it was ultimately not worth playing. Now, in line with trying to keep the deck both consistent and with a high non-engine count, I've also trimmed down the copy of King and Hero down to 1. I already talked about how I wanted to cut these before, but I felt like I needed them more for the long game. But I feel like Shaman fixes that. With them being a 1, they'll still be acceptable because I can access them pretty freely with Obsidian, recycle them, and get them back, and not have a problem. Moving on to the extra deck, not much changes. The extra deck was pretty flexible before, and I've decided to take out some of the cards I was summoning less often and putting the fusion monsters in. But maybe there's a world you play Super Polymerization because of the synergy with Obsidian and Embers, and you can play other fusions as well to complement that package. However, I feel like Super Poly in general isn't super good in this format, so I'm not really focusing on that. And yeah, that's what my deck looks like. I'm going to play locals with it and see how it goes, and we can reflect any changes we want to make later.
And we're back at it again, another week, and we are back to locals. Still chasing down a first place. Seems to be harder than winning anything else for me right now, but that's okay. And with this new deck, I'm feeling pretty good. It got definite improvements from the last set, and despite not being a tier 1 meta breaker deck, it's not bad. So I'm expecting good results.
All right, so now we are finally into the tournament, and I'm ready to go with this brand new Ashen deck. Curious to see how all these new improvements are going to pan out. And we're round 1. We lose the die roll, and I'm already wondering, okay, will this be different than our last tournament where we were pretty favorable in our dice rolls? But our opponent chooses to let us start, and that tells us one thing: we're probably playing against Tenpai, and if we aren't, they probably playing Go second deck. So got to keep that in mind as I map out my first turn. I look at my hand here, and I'm feeling pretty comfortable because I have access to Vados, and Vados is the most important card against Tenpai because the best card in Tenpai is the field spell, Sending and Summoning, making them both immune and getting their engine unlocked. So having access to that should cut them off of their ability to play, as well as give us some removal and our follow-up. And yeah, Vados was already the best card of this deck, and it only shines even brighter in this matchup. So I'm going to be playing this with my normal strategy, which is try to make sure I always have Vados in hand to disrupt them, but also to nuke the field, like in a volcano eruption, triggering every turn. So yeah, that's going to be the goal. Try to trigger it as many times as possible, always making sure I have one more to go for them. And now keep in mind, with the new Extinguished of the Ashened, you have way more access to Vados, so I wasn't too concerned, but not having to rely on like a priestess going through is kind of nice, because obviously that is somewhat vulnerable to hand traps. But here now I have Prosperity, and I'm thinking what I grab, because I already have decent access to my Ashen cards. I have an Awakening in hand, but I also have a Vados just cold. So if I get the Ashen Field spell, It can get me 2 layers of Vados even if the first one goes completely wrong. Specifically, if like an Ash is used on Awakening of Vados, then it means that I'll have the Obsidian plus Vados to get my bowl rolling. So yeah, that's why I decided to get Obsidian here. Now, for a brief moment, you saw me ponder the Priestess, but I realized that if I get Priestess, that means I can't summon the Priestess off of the field spell, which actually is a net negative towards my end goal. Even though it may seem like a positive in the immediate sense where I got the +1, it's really not in line with how I'm trying to play out my turn. So important to have that future sight and know what you're doing. Now, I say that as I'm about to make a huge mistake here, and that is just first time playing the deck in months. And you'll see, I just forget to get the trap off Vados. Nope, I didn't draw both. Nope, I'm not trying to bluff that I have my traps. I just forgot. Which almost defeats the entire purpose of it, because the whole point is that you cycle into your Vados plus field spell again with Embers, but then also you'll still have access to the trap now, which will act as further interruption and trigger that volcano effect. So here I'm playing out, I'm thinking, and I'm still getting used to the combos for the deck, because again, I haven't played with the new cards. Before, Hero here was rather unimpressive. Hello, Future Jesse here, and I realize I made a mistake. For the entirety of this replay portion, I have called King Hero, and I've called Hero Knight. Knight is not even a card. So yeah, just keep that in mind as I mix up the names. Make sure you check on screen so you know what I'm referring to. And apologies, you know Yu-Gi-Oh players can't read, so yep. But it's clear here that I have the easy line that seems to be somewhat standard is Hero for Priestess, add Extinguished, add another Vados, Fuse for Embers, and then add back the Obsidian. So I'm just making sure that is truly the best course of action for myself, because it really isn't that impressive of a play. It really just progresses the game only slightly, which as far as a turn 1 play goes is just average. But it's still better than what we had before, especially if you were Pyro locked. Not that I am in this specific moment. Now, if you have extra extenders, you do want to keep analyzing how can you press forward in these type of spots, because especially if I'm not locked to this point, before the Extinguish at least, I can make link monsters like SP or Princess and try make generic interrupts in that way. Or if I'm not, I can make Banshee. Banshee let me add a Pyro, so I can add more follow-up or Vadoses, and then I can fuse that away because it's still a Pyro for Embers. But here, obviously, my only other center is Awakening, and I'm using that as an interrupt to make sure that I can cut off his field spell. So I just summon the Embers, set up my plays, and I'm feeling pretty okay. Now, I summon the Embers in defense here because if we attack the Vados and I decide I want to kill the Vados, I can just use the protection effects of Embers to kill whatever Pyro battles, and I'd still live. However, I don't want to give him the easy ability to crash if he wants to, and then that would force the nuke effect. So this way, like, if he goes crash or attack the Embers and the battle phase is gone, I can say, okay, fine, just kill the Embers. And then I'll still have like my fuse effect online to trigger the eruption. But obviously, I don't have it here. He doesn't know that though. Maybe he thinks I just have it face down, so I'm going to have to go with that. Really only way of going about this in this mistaken moments, and then just have to do better next time. Your prosperity is nice because I'll get a good idea of what my opponent is up to. Now, obviously, I do expect Tenpai, but you never know, especially in locals when it's not as competitive as other tournaments. So we get to see pretty easily there's just a bunch of Tenpai cards there, and we may get a decent idea of what our opponent's trying to do based off what they add. Adding the field spell, though, is pretty normal. It means he may not have another one, but even then, that's not too much of an idea because it is likely that his field spell will die. Now, I'm going to let him activate the effect of search here before I place on top of it, because then he can't use it again. And even if he has another one to play on top, again, I don't want him to be able to set up the Tenpai engine for free, for obvious reasons. Like, obviously, if he plays the field spell on top, normal summons a Padra, like, fine. But this way, he needs 2 more Tenpai extenders to really get good use out of it. And I do have the Vados as well, so if he plays on the field spell, I actually can deal with it. It's not that easy. But yeah, I'm in a good spot here. Now he has to wonder what is the best way to push through. Normal summons a Fadra here, and that does nothing. This is the bad one to draw by itself. Not it sooner, and if he links, I can nuke the field. So I'm kind of just chilling, waiting to see what happens, and he decides to just sell one and pass. So this is where the Ashen deck kind of fails to kill, especially when you don't have the trap in play. Now, it's important to note that I didn't use Vados in his main phase before I ended his turn. That's because he says he's leaving main phase, but if I use a Vados, he has to stay in main phase. and I could be tricked into making a play preemptively. And then if he stays in main phase and has more interruptions, I get screwed. So playing just for advantage, trigger my Vados effects, and like get the maximum value of triggering Vados and Obsidian every turn is greedy, because it actually opens him up to do Tenpai stuff. And versus Tenpai, biggest thing is make sure they don't do Tenpai stuff, because they do, you die. Engine versus engine, a lot of the time versus Tenpai, when they get going, they'll beat you. So just know where you stand, and that's all right. So that's why what I'm playing for here. Now, if he actually passes, then fantastic, I'll always take that, and I'll be a bit slower because I obviously missed the first trap and all such, but I'm good this time. So now I finally get to the Ashen of Eternity, and I can start making good fusion plays the next turn. However, this turn, I really don't have that much firepower. Without the ability to clear off their field with the fusion effect, as well as produce this high attack monster, this deck can't put up incredible damage really fast. So yeah, this next turn is still going to be the same setup. I'm still going to be trying to establish field spell control, as well as clean up the field a bit, maybe deal a bit of damage. And 2 Vados in the field is kind of awkward because you can't start linking them away, so I think I may decide to start clearing them off a little bit. It's more to note that Vaudeo here can't be killed by battle, and that's where Obsidian is important, because the turning up Pyro means I can use the special ability of the Embers to punch through it. It does mean that I don't deal damage, but that's okay, because the base thing here is skipping off of the body. That could be a problem next turn. And phase comes, I cycle the draw, and I still have a bunch of hand traps, and I'm feeling pretty good. Very similar spot to last turn, where I can just keep controlling the field spells, and then now that I actually have my trap, I should be good to go. Another pot here is a good sign. Probably can't afford to do 6. I mean, maybe he can, but it's kind of rough. So 3 cards, we'll see what he does. We'll change a Heart, Lightning Storm, and Call By. None of which are too impressive. Maybe just be Call By to hit my Veilers in hand. Change of Heart doesn't do much because I have my Ashen for Eternity, and Lightning Storm cannot be activated, so pretty good. Here, Change of Heart comes down, targeting the Embers, and I decide before he Link Summons, it'd be a good idea to fuse everything away. This way I can kill his back row as well, in case he set a Kaiman last turn, or Imperm, or just, I mean, Imperm doesn't do that much, but just generally keep him off of anything overly destructive. Next up, he summons Padra, and it's clear, no field spell, so I'm good to go. And Effect Veiler comes down. And actually, it's Talents next, and Talents is not really that good here, because you can't draw with Prosperity. You can look at my hand and take a hand trap, which is fine, or steal my monster. But he steals my monster here, and, you know, puts a lot of damage. But this doesn't matter, because now I can just fuse using his field. So here, before he gets to link away, or turn stuff to attack in Battle phase, you know, it's just simple. I'm going to make the fusion monster here, fuse away my 3 Pyros back, and I get to nuke the field with the 2 Vados, the fusion and the monster. Now, obviously, there's no back row, so it's not going to matter. I'll kill the Padra, and he'll be left with a couple measly cards to my still Vados in hand. That'll hit check a field spell, as well as my hand traps. Passes back, and should be the rest is history here. I have my setup still very much intact, still Vados in hand with Obsidian. I already have the fusion trap face up, a 4500 attack fusion, and now the only thing I have to do here is figure out what's the best way to kill under Nibiru. And I'd realize later how easy it is to do this, but it's still just important to make sure you're not making mistakes. So, especially as if it's your first few times really getting hold of the deck. So I set the next trap here, Ashen for Endlessness, or I don't remember the names, but the one that steals. The Priestess out to act as more fusion material, but then I realized that, like, I don't need this extinguished anyways, because I just still have the fusion monster up. Get Shaman out, get another Obsidian. But again, this is really just overkill. If I just fuse, it is game, because you get the extra bonus attack from the trap. And at this point, it is summon number 3, so I can only summon one more time while being safe into Nibiru. And I get the Knight here, which will be able to pop the Vados if I want to. And here I'm just checking to see that which line will kill, because I'm still very conscious in Nibiru, whether he has it or not. It's just good habits either way. And then once I figure out like the best lines to approach this, I'll be able to keep doing it moving forward in the tournament. So here I fuse for Embers with Extinguished for no reason. This is not the correct play. I just forgot I could use the trap again using his monster. And because the Embers attacks twice, it's just game. But yeah, no, if I just used the trap, it was also just lethal. Moving on to game number 2. I feel like this is a rather good matchup for me because I get to go first, establish myself, and then the biggest advantage to his deck is the field spell. And being able to cut that off is fantastic, but then also I cut off a lot of going second cards that require him to have no cards on the field, like Lightning Storm, or evenly matched. So that's another big edge. As I'm sitting here, I'm not sure what I'm really expecting. I am still expecting to probably make to go first, because if he goes first, he makes Erratic Seal, which is just nothing versus my deck anyways. And even if he does make Erratic Seal, then like my traps like Barrier will still be good. I put in Bell because it lets me take out some of the dead cards I don't want. I think Valent and Imperm are pretty bad in this matchup, same in the Biru. I have to take those out as well. And then Cosmics are good in this position. Now, if I'm not able to get a Vados in his field, or he has a Duster to kill it, then Cosmic is pretty bad value, and it's just more redundancy to hit the field spell. However, I still feel like it's better than something like Impermanent Veiler, so that's why I elect to go with Cosmic. And yes, he makes me start again, and now I have to rethink about how I want to approach this turn. I activate Distinguish here to check for a hand trap, and I'm pretty sure I only have the Awakening of Vados as my actual way to play. So I elect to see if he'd Ash the Eternity. He doesn't, and I just set the Awakening to pass and use it as an ability to pop the field spell. I could have gone for a better play and used the Awakening immediately, but I felt like using it as a trap hit the field spell was actually just more important. So even though I hit the field spell, hitting the Cosmic is not bad because now I can use the trap more freely and use the Stat Rotation here. This will play over the Obsidian. Now, I do make a mistake here. We checked the ruling for a bit on how this resolves because in olden days, when you destroy a field spell, when you put a field spell on top of a field spell, you destroy it. And then if it had an effect that triggered by being destroyed, it would be able to trigger. So I feel like something got changed, and it got changed to being destroyed by game mechanics, I thought, which still counts as being destroyed, and Obsidian does not specify if it's by card effect. So I came to the conclusion that, okay, let's trigger Obsidian here. However, after the match, when I asked some judges online, the store couldn't give me a good answer. It turns out that I could not activate it. So no, this is not a legal activation here of Obsidian. I'm still fairly confident this game would have gone in my favor without the special summon here. I'm the advantage that Vados provides is still plenty. I feel like I still would have been in a good spot even without the special summon here. But given that, I get the Priestess, another Obsidian, because I just want to make sure I have that cycle completely going. If something happens to my Vados here, I do want it to have another follow-up. And with the second Vados in hand, that just means that should everything I have in play go awry, then I still have an entirely next line of defense, or, you know, play the next turn. Try to sum myself up again, get the Fusion Trap set up, and now we'll see what he can play forward. He'll have 4 cards left in hand, and I still have Ash for Kaiman, and I feel okay. Noel's Padre here, and I let it resolve because he's already used the field spell to search. It's unlikely he'll go for the field spell. And also, he can't even activate the field spell because Separation locks him from activating a Lock Control face on field spell. That means he can hold the Ash for this Kaiman here, and if he goes battle phase, quick Ash, unless there's a call by, means he can't progress the gameplay any forward. If he had a Chandra, it could have been nasty, but thankfully not anything that had happened. From here, you can just clean up the Priestess, which would have been 1600 directly in proper game, but it's fine. So here, draw for turn, and I get to Chicken Game, get the free draw. It means if I draw Prosperity, I won't do anything, but it's okay. So next I'll play over the Chicken Game with the Obsidian, which again I shouldn't have. But lets me play more than I needed to. I could have just used the Extinguishing Grave to set up Ember's play pretty easily, and that would have been sufficient, but at this point I get plenty of fusion materials up, and I get to just do anything I want. Very easy lethal line. You actually use the trap as summon number 4, and it's enough to kill him, and that's the match. And there, yeah, we see 2 Nibiru's in his hand, so we made the correct play by playing around it both games. Not sure if we had a game 1, but yes. Playing on Nibiru, very important.
All right, we were able to take down round 1. Tenpai is a pretty good matchup because Vados just solos the deck, and Awakening helps as well. But it's been a while since I played this deck, and it's kind of showing my rustiness. All theory only gets you so far when you're missing your triggers, like the first Vados I forgot to do. And kind of had to get back in the flow of how I want to play my resource management for this game, because it's atypical with what a normal deck wants to do. But otherwise, round 1 down, jitters are gone, and it should be good for us at the tournament.
All right, and now we've made it to round number 2. At locals, it's a lot more likely that you know what your opponent's going to play because you can walk between rounds. However, as a content creator, I'm spending a lot of my time between rounds focusing on fixing any lighting issues in the previous rounds or log work, so I don't actually have that edge, and I'm not sure what I'm going to be up against. Here my opponent rolls a nice 10, and I'm unable to match it, so another die roll lost, but no fear, that's why we play hand traps. We have the 12 plus the Vados, and I feel relatively okay. Here, the opening of the Spirit Gates tells me, all right, this is either Unchained or Ubel, but that's a lot of information to go off of, and we can hand trap accordingly. It's Beckoning Beast, and then adds Chaos Summoning Beast, and this makes me lean towards more of an actual Ubel deck, because it needs more one-card combos to play it by itself. I think this is way worse than the actual Unchained deck, but still just noticing how much of a choke point Yama can be on some of these decks. I am permit because without an excess of Unchained cards in these decks, if you cut them off there, they have no way to keep playing past it. And then I hold the Ashras Masara because I know this is another huge choke point of the deck, and my knowledge of the deck pays off greatly because he just passes right after. Strong hand on my behalf, but it made it very easy. He just can't do anything. Now, I get to get my Obsidian, and as long as I have my 2-card play intact, then we are golden. So here I'm thinking about how I want to approach this turnout. And I get the Prosperity for 6 here first, because I feel like it may change how I summon off my Obsidian, or what I add off my Priestess. I'm pretty sure my way to play here is Priestess, get Extinguished, get Vados, and I'd rather not do that. But here he Ashes the Prosperity, and I'm thinking here, like, is this worth doing? Because I won't be able to do the same, like, play that I would before if I let this resolve. But I have Call By, so I do have the ability to stop it. That being said, Call By is absolutely insane versus his deck, especially if he goes the next turn, discard Spirit Gates targeting Samsara. I could banish it. It also cuts off the Samsaras he could get later in the turn. Or I could even use in other effects like Spirit of Ubel. So I decided to let it go through and decide I have enough gas to play with just what I have that I'm better off holding the Call By. And if his last card is Valor, or one of his last 2 cards are Valor, then I can still check it. If he had a face-down card that could be Imperm, I would be a lot more inclined to chain the Call By here, but not have that. So I get to do the Vados stuff, and I'm remembering the trap this time. Let's go. I get my Ashened for Eternity here, and I should add this to my hand. This is Endlessness. Add Endlessness. I should add it to my hand. That way I can mix it up with the Call By, but sure, I just grab it face down. Bit of just suboptimality on my behalf. I'm thinking through what's the best line of play given that I'm not doing my normal combo. So yeah, here I realized the quick adaptation that when I start with Priestess, I can manipulate the play a little bit differently by using an extra level 4 body, because I already have the one established. Get Banshee, get the Vados that way, and then if I still have the Extinguished Engrave, that would give me access to the Embers. What I noticed by doing this play is if the card I need to search off Priestess, like in this case, I already have the Obsidian, and I need to search Vados to get going for the combo. But if I already had the Vados and needed to search Obsidian off of the Priestess, then I had no way to access Extinguish, therefore no way to fuse, and that would have been a bit different. So just something to keep in mind, because that type of trend is important as I keep playing out the rest of the tournament. So here I set myself up again. I have my Eruption, as I said again, ready to go on the next turn. And I should be able to kill him the next turn as long as I hold him off here. He searches again with his Beckonings and Gates, which are all like kind of low value searches, not really super important. And here he's just checking if no targets left. So you can't activate it, which I don't really care about. I mean, it kind of tells me maybe he doesn't have a normal summon. Then he has a normal summon. I'm like, okay, so I guess it didn't matter that much. He tributes it, and I'm going to Call By it. So now he knows not to revive it with Spirit Gates, but it's fine. I think stopping that Call By here is super important still. And now I know most cards in his hand. Now he discards Shaman here, and that's actually a really good discard, because this in combination with a lot of the other Unchained cards and Ubel cards are immune to destruction, and that is my main form of disruption. So it is a little bit concerning, and until it's my turn, I am not able to fuse with his monsters. So here I'm wondering if it is worth me using Vados and then fusing the field. I decide it's not worth it. I'll let him keep playing. If he summons Yama, he can't pop anything without setting a card first, and then I can do it later. I want to get him to try to use the Shyama, especially because if he had a card to set and I nuke the field, then he can use Shyama and then trigger the Yama. I actually knew the last card in his hand he could set. It was the Spirit Gates. But here he uses the Shyama first, which means I get to keep going. And now I need to fuse here, because if I don't, the Shyama will pop the monster. But also now the Shyama is used, and he used Yama, thankfully, then I'm in a pretty comfortable spot to just clean up. And after I nuke the field here, he'll have no cards left, and the last card Spirit Gates, and I should be good to go. So I'm just making sure I can kill him next turn, just setting up that level of follow-up. I get to fuse everything away, and I get to nuke the field. Making an Embers probably also would have been fine. I would have added back the Obsidian and I the Vados in hand, or the Extinguished to get Vados, and that would have been completely manageable as well. But this case is also just fine. He has no cards left. I mean, there's no way I lose. I already did some damage last turn. So then I get to Eternity. I get to add back, and yeah, this is honestly just good enough as well, because even if I don't have the Embers, this can shuffle back some of the cards I need to recycle, get another Obsidian. Anyways, that way. Yeah, I mean, there's no way I ever lost this game at this point. I knew every card he had, and as we'd say in Josh's stream, we had perfect information. So yeah, game over. All we have to do is get there. Thinking about what I side deck here, I have a lot of good options here. Bell's great versus a deck that's mostly graveyard based, so are the Bestials versus that deck. And then other cards like Dark Ruler could also be very functional, as well as other hand traps like Mourner, because hitting that Yama, as you can see, was fairly practical. So I have to find a way to manage all these things while also keeping my engine intact. But I end up deciding to lighten up on a bit of my engine. I take out some of our starters, because the 6th card may help me a bit. and just fill up the hand trap lineup a little more comprehensively. I end up deciding I can't put in like 3 Bell, 3 Mourner, and 3 Bestials. There's just too many cards. So I think I ended up deciding to like 1 or 2 of each Mourner and Bellin, and the Bestials I decided to be the best and least clunky in multiples, so I opt to max out on those. Alright, so we got a quick look at my hand here, and I'm pretty sure I didn't have much in the form of hand traps besides Effect Veiler. And here starts off with 9 red plane plus Spirit Ubel, which is absolutely incredible, because he gets access to several different parts of his engine now. He can get like the Ubel and then a Grave Squirmer. The Grave Squirmer will then turn into Yama, which would threaten interruption, as well as the Squirmer can revive the Spirit of Neos, another Ubel card like Eternal Favorite, which is pretty much Ashen for Endlessness. And I'd be pretty much playing on the back foot. The next follow-up is also really good, so I'd really be in a rough position. He had some stars here, so I'm inclined to think he doesn't have a normal summon. A very important read to make here as I map out my disruption for the rest of the turn. Normal Samsara, and I like to not to stop it here, because if he does have the Grave Squirmer in hand, then I'm just doing this all for nothing, and I'd rather hold my interruption from something else. Now, I like to Veiler this Spirit of Ubel here because I think the Eternal Favorite is just a card I cannot handle, and I'll try to deal with the rest of the board a piece at a time, but the ability to keep floating back Ubels plus fusing my field would mean he's just doing the same thing as me, but better. So try to keep him off it. However, he has Shavara, so he can't play through it. Now, if he had Grave Squirmer, he also would be able to stop it, but I felt like it was a risk worth taking. We'll see how that pans out. So he gets Eternal Favorite. Very clear to him that that's what I was trying to stop. I don't know if he plays more Unchained cards than just Shavara or Shayama, which I can actually see in his hand. So he doesn't have too much in terms of what to do. He just makes Rage here instead. He gets a set an Unchained Trap from the deck. The Yama and Grave, his follow-up is a little weakened, although the escape is kind of rough being able to pop my cards. And the Rage into SP is what kind of concerns me the most, because it'll clear my field super effectively, as well as you'll have the ability to Contact Fuse if you get the Ubel up. It's important to note the Ubel's not here, so I don't have to worry about Contact Fuse during this turn. I'm thinking what's the best way to approach this. It's important to note that because there's no Yama and Grave, if I'm able to force out the escape, then this Rage will be gone permanently and he won't be able to link for SP. But also, if he uses the Rage to make SP, then he can't use the escape. So I should be in an okay position, but it's still incredibly hard to deal with this, because while I may be able to push through the current field, I also have to keep in mind, how do I stop his follow-up? So Eternal Favorite will be able to revive a Ubel monster from the grave, which is a problem in its own, but then also in future turns we'll be able to fuse. It's going to be a constant flow of resources, and I don't have an immediate answer to that. I can't do anything unless I fuse for my Vados fusion, and it's going to be hard to set up, especially while he has the escape here, because if he holds the Vados and is careful with it, then it's a problem, because yeah, he'll just hold the escape for my trap and I'll have no real way of beating it. And again, I set it here instead of adding it to hand, which is really stupid, but again, if he just held it for when I activate it, that still also answers it entirely. I'm thinking, what's the best way, if any, I can force it? So I have to think, how do I force this escape trap so that I can then rely on the Endlessness to get to Vados, to the back row, and put me in a decent position, because that's, I think, what the game plan is going to be. Especially as he hasn't established too much of a follow-up in terms of graveyard effects. I got Precess just to generate more bodies on field, and I'm still kind of just lost at like what the best option is. I get Extinguish because it'll set up a fusion play if I need to do something proactive and immediate, and get cards out of my hand. So then I get to my hand the hero. I think I set it out Knight, going seconds. I decided the pop effect wouldn't ever be too worth it, although here it might have been pretty good if I'm staring at the Rage, and Vados being able to chain to the Rage or to the escape to how my effects go through could have been pretty nifty. Here he decides to use the effect to link off. I'm like, okay, this is fine. We'll see if he goes SP or Anguish. He goes Anguish. This Anguish here means the escape is still alive, which still leaves my trap vulnerable, and that's kind of the problem. So, okay, so after all that is done, I still have a Prosperity in hand, and now if I foresaw all this happening, I was better off either using the Prosperity to start of the turn to try and find an answer, but I didn't feel like I could find any card that really fixed the situation. I'd be better off saving it for next turn, and why I did this is because it lets me trigger the Obsidian in the end phase, but back the other Obsidian in the grave, draw a card, which is both advantage and some resource cycling. Now, obviously, that confliction between Prosperity and the field spell can be kind of annoying, and that is why I don't love Prosperity in this deck. However, I think you do need it. It's just one of the best cards in the game, especially in a deck that doesn't have this just absurd amount of starters or one card of plays. It does need to start pairing things together. So I'd like to just pass flying my hand traps as well as my Endlessness and hope that maybe he misses that the Endlessness is my key to victory and uses escape on something else. Because again, like, there's no given, especially when playing a rogue deck, that your opponents are going to know exactly what to stop. So at this point, as we reach the end phase, he uses his Eternal Favorite to revive the Ubel. And I'm debating here if it's worth selling it, but because you can't use effects on the summon, I decided that, okay, the summoning Spirit Ubel doesn't actually search. It's not a big problem to resolve. So yeah, I get my draw. I'm feeling comfortable. And then before he ends, he makes a very big mistake. He flips Rivalry. And it takes us a second to realize it. But I'm like, wait, they're all Pyros. Because on my turn, they're Pyros. And he activated Rivalry on my turn. Which means he's actually selecting Pyros when he uses Rivalry. And then when the turn ends, his monsters turn off Pyro except Vados. But he's already locked into Pyros. So the new monsters have to leave. And now he's Rivalry locked himself into Pyros. Pretty bad. And now what looked like a very rough position for me has now turned out to be quite favorable. So here he turns to the battle phase and attacks, and I'm feeling pretty good. It's very curious why he put Rivalry in versus my deck at all. It is not good, but that's okay. Mistakes happen, and our opponent will certainly not be doing that again. I know they learned their lesson after this, because this was very rough. I have to think about what's the best way to go here, and I know the last card's Escape, so unless there's a hand trap, I should be able to get everything going. Getting the Priestess should mean I get to Extinguish, then get the Vados, and the cycle shall continue. And because I already have some sort of Pyros in the grave, I'm thinking, how can I set up an ability of Shaman to get an extra field spell in play, which I could then convert into a draw by playing on top of the field by back of Embers, or just not adding back of Embers in general. So here I go for like a simple line. Here I get the Shaman again. Oh no, instead of Vados here, I decide that I get Hero to special summon. And do I already have a Vados? Is that why I did this? I'm not sure actually. Would Vados have been better even? I got the Vados special from deck. Would this have been better? I would have got the other trap, which could have been solid. I think what I wanted to do here actually is I realized I want to make the Vados fusion monster here to blow up his back row, because it hits his follow-up. Even though it unlocks Rivalry, I feel like it's still a solid play. However, my plan actually doesn't work. I realized this quickly, because if I make the Banshee, it doesn't have a level, and the Vados fusion monster requires level 9 or lower Pyro monsters, so I can't access that if I go for that play. So I decide to kind of abort what I was doing and just attack. I do my half damage and I pass over to him, and he just concedes. His hand is not anything that does anything. He was clear he either excited out the Shyama or he drew it after he summoned it off Escape. So yeah, and I mean, I had the 3 hand traps to feel relatively comfortable against his 3-card hand, as well as somewhat of setup, although that could have been played a bit better still.
Okay, round 1 done, and that was a show of what not to do almost. Yeah, that's the thing when you have all these weird cards and Unchained Ubel cards as well. The amount of floating makes the game states incredibly complicated. That's not to say this is an excuse for sloppy play, but I was kind of struggling how to deal with all the floating, kind of racking my brain. What's my game plan? Because you don't want to just blind activate things. You want to have some sort of actual strategy, and then he kind of just gave me the out. So yeah, weird game, but 2-0. I think it's 2 rounds to go. Let's get this.
All right, we've made it to round 3. And so far, 2-0 with O2 and die rolls is a pretty good start. And I'm feeling pretty confident in the deck. Now, I'm still learning, obviously, and mistakes have been abundant in the first 2 rounds. But as I get a better grasp on the new play patterns with the new cards, it becomes a lot easier to play faster, and play more effectively. And here, opponent rolls a 9, and I roll a 7 or a 6. Can't see exactly, but yeah, I lose the roll again. But that's okay. Do not fret. That we play hand traps for a reason. And this deck can actually play into a board somewhat okay. It's not the end of the world. And then I see my opponent's Momento. And I'm like, oh, that's super cool, because I actually learned this deck in Mastodon not too long ago. And I think it's not that bad, but it also means I know how to interact with it now. I know what all the cards do. Which, when you're playing with a rogue deck, is like part of the biggest challenge in trying to succeed. So here I know the card I want to stop here is Tatsu New something. But that horsey thing is the biggest card to stop. He needs Bone Party to play through it. Or the Fusion Spell being kind of awkward in many of those spots. He has Bone Party, so he can play through it to a decent extent here via Goblin. Goblin will send 2 from deck to grave, and then he can revive the Mace off of the Witch, and he'll get into all of his plays. Now, it's funny here playing the cards in Mastodon. I think I make this remark in real life. I'm not familiar with the TCG rarities of the cards, so seeing like Mace being super rare, where in my head, if I had envisioned what rarity Mace would be, I probably would have thought it'd be a rare, being like a one-of monster from a side set that's rare only. But yeah, so he gets the Goddic out. Goddic adds back the Bone Party for next turn. Like, okay, that's whatever. And then gets the Mace. Mace effects tribute off, and then give him access to the Fusion. Fusion being a very strong card in the stack because it lets him fuse from the grave by shuffling cards back, but then also will let him summon this insane Fusion that has a whole other bunch of abilities you'll see. And in the grave, Memento Fusion also can banish itself to pop a card and then add another Fusion or any other Memento spell. But here he makes the Fusion monster that lets him revive one from grave, and when it's popped, and then on summon it can pop itself and any other Memento card to add 2 Mementos from deck to hand. So you see here where it's all going, and he's getting all the Mementos in place. And now, while a lot of the cards individually aren't that great, the ability to mass cycle through your deck is pretty impressive. And you can see why the cards aren't more powerful, because if they were, it'd be nuts, like a tier level of cycling here. Let's combine Creation out, which if you're not familiar with, just summons from the grave when a card effect is activated. So he's going to be able to summon that Witch back, which can then search a Mace, which can then steal a card I control. So I'm going to have to keep track of that. Destroy the cards face down. I know it's a Fusion spell and a Bone Party, so I know both cards are there. I have to play around a Guardian Chimera as well. Now the thing here is Creation will also come back each turn, so he has the disruptions and he has follow-up here, and this is going to be incredibly hard to beat. So I'm trying to approach what the best way is to deal with this, and I realized that pretty quickly the card I need to deal with badly is SP, and the reason is SP not only like proves disruption during my turn, but then if I try to fuse the Vados away during his turn, he can SP chain banish the Vados, and it'll pretty much negate any of my efforts to clear his field. So not only will there be a whole lot of follow-up that I'd have to worry about, but this SP can pretty much cancel out any sort of disruption I'm trying to provide. And this is a lot for me to actually tackle. This deck, while being okay into fields, is not the best equipped to deal with several different issues at the same time. And the grind game is not phenomenal. It is fine. It's not a terrible deck in the grind game, but a deck like Momento, I think, that is very much graveyard effect reliant, thrives significantly more in these type of game states. So I'm not trying to force a grind game. And he probably is. I trigger the Vados here. I'm thinking, what do I special summon? Anything I summon will probably just get hit by this SP or get stolen. I think the best course of action is to go for Knight here, because I can chain pop the Vados and try to trigger it. But in reality, if he just times his disruptions appropriately, then I am going to get boned. So I summon up the hero here. Because I don't have the field spell in play here, I can only target Vados. Nothing's a pyro at the moment besides the Vados here. I have to think how to maneuver this properly, but right now there's this threat in the battle phase clear, and then a pop as well. But if he uses the Mace to steal the Knight, then yeah, I'm just double checking to make sure that I can't do anything about this, and I can go like chain pop. That way he can't use the pop itself, because if I give him the hero, he can pop itself with his own effect, and I won't get back in the end phase. So I try and pop the Vados here to make sure that he can't use the effect, even though I know that this will never resolve. The SP will check it. And then yes, SP chain here, banishing the Vados and itself, meaning I won't be able to deal with either of those resources for the rest of the turn. And I followed up with the Prosperity, and I'm not really sure what I was looking at here. Like, I drew most of my cards that let me extend, and I don't have too much going for me. I reveal hand traps there, as well as another Awakening of Vados, which looks okay, as well as Priestess. And there's really not too much going for me, right? I'm still trying to think, how do I beat this Momento Fusion face down turning to Guardian Chimera? Because I need to, in all reality, I know how to deal with this SP and then also protect my Endlessness to then resolve. Because then maybe, just maybe, if I'm able to full clear the board here, we want to follow up. If he doesn't have a graveyard in play, then the Combined Creation can't come out. But even that being said, the Momento Fusion will be able to add back cards, and the Bone Party will special from deck, so it's not looking too hot for our Ashen player here. And I'm thinking what the best course of action here is, and I'm trying to think if there's any way for him to cycle back banished monsters. Maybe I can try a grind game with Call By, which was a strategy that like wasn't consistent for me to get. I decided, okay, it's not worth. Maybe I can bait him with Awakening of Vados. And I think here, okay, now my game plan here, if I have to protect the Awakening, is to set cards face down, pretend to go to end phase by saying end of main phase 1, force Memento Fusions regarding Chimeras the bad cards, and then I'll be good. However, the reality is, and I quickly realized this, that even though I'm able to pull this off successfully, I'll be left with one card, and that's it. And the one card I'll have, and he fuses away the Knight, so I want to lose that as well as my ability to trigger Vados. And the reality there is now I just still only have one card to deal with an entire field of follow-up, and that's just still never going to be enough for me to win. And I decide to pack it up. I should stop wasting my time here, and this one is a loss. Now, as I side deck, while this deck does have fusion monsters, I decided it's probably not worth putting a T-Barrier in. This deck isn't fusion dependent. And once you get going to the point where you have the fusion, putting the fusion spell on Grave is honestly good enough, so you want to use DeBear preemptively. And if you do that, they can chain it if they have another copy that wasn't searched, which is kind of annoying. So you kind of force to just draw phase D-Barrier, they can pivot their plays accordingly. They can still do a lot of their strong plays, just not the specific fusion line. Ultimately, I think that means it's not worth going for D-Barrier when I go first. I think Bell is pretty good, though, because they have a lot of effects that are kind of crucial to revive from the grave, and that could be in a good spot, including the fusion. If I Bell the fusion, or even a mace, or something targeting a mace, it could be pretty good. As well as I'm still uncertain here if they can cycle back their banished cards, so I'm thinking here, at least for the next game, that I may want to have some Bestials in play. Now, here I look at my hand, I have 3 hand traps, as well as Vados, or way to get Vados, and Obsidian, so I'm just making sure they don't have any better lines, but the play here is simple. I have no way to beat a hand trap, I just kind of got to go for it. The Vados into play, add it back to my hand. I can play the Obsidian, and then I kind of just go for it. Now, the big thing I have to wonder here is if I'm going for the fusion spell, or the fusion trap off of the Vados here, or Ashen for Eternity, which gets me more follow-up theoretically. I decided the fusion trap is still just better, because even if I get stopped here, I get hand trapped, then I can fuse for Embers, add back the field spell, it sets me up partly for the next turn. And then when I add back the Obsidian off Embers on his turn, I can activate on my turn and then fuse his field away like a Super Poly. But thankfully, he doesn't Veiler the hero, so I get to go a bit further. I get to remake the Embers here instead of if he had hit the hero. Obviously, he doesn't know that I'd never Priestess in hand, so I still have the Obsidian up. It just means that I'm lacking on Vados. He doesn't know that though, so I get to just pass pretty comfortably, and I bluff it up, as well as making all his guys Pyro the second my turn starts, other than me having to activate a first action on the next turn. Self-reported Prosperity here reveals a couple options, including Ash Roll, and then Prosperity, which is nothing, Rhoda, which gets the Dark Blade, or the Goblin. He adds Ash here, which tells me he should already have sufficient engine. I have to be careful. And playing the field spell is nice here, because it does give me more information on his hand on how to stop him appropriately. Normal Dark Blade, and then use the effects of Pop, which very much lines up with my Veiler in hand. I'm feeling comfortable with that, because not only does he lose the card, but now he doesn't get to use the second effect of the Dark Blade and really take advantage. It's important to note here that his Momento clan can revive from the grave when one of these guys is destroyed, so I'm not going to pop the field here. I'd rather just take the damage, not let him revive Dark Blade from grave, because that's going to be how he gets into plays, or revive his Angel, and then without a Bone Party or another play of his own, he's kind of in a hard spot. Another nice thing about Vados here as well is it stops him from accessing the Tatsuno, Gusu, whatever it's called, because he has to control only no monsters or mementos. So yeah, very hard for him to extend past this point. I get to just fuse by clearing the field, and I get to poke some damage. Now, because my flow of resources got stopped last turn, you can see why it's important to keep cycling up your eruptions. I can't do too much here. Thankfully, he's also low on cards, so I have to keep him off of Bay. Yeah, there's that horse that he couldn't summon last turn, and I am permanent just to make sure he can't do anything. Now, if he enters battle phase, we'll be able to revive a card with the field spell. So I decide, okay, it's fine. This is why I had Bell in this matchup. This is an important effect here. I'm going to eat the damage. I'll Bell it. Now, his last card has to be something meaningful, otherwise he'll just die on the following turn. Again, my guy does have this bonus attack. It's a 39 thanks to the trap card. And yeah, it's enough damage to seal it, even though my flow of resources was cut off. The hand traps I had established with the little bit of presence I did have was enough to win. Now, if he had Veiled the hero, it may have been a different story. Thankfully, I was able to get a little bit further, and it's all good. So as I said, I'm deciding for the next game. I am thinking about Bestials in this deck, because for one, it lets me deal with SP, which is nice as well, just attack over super cleanly. Then if I'm able to banish any one of Memento monsters, then that'd be pretty good. So I think it is a solid strategy, as well as just all of my hand traps. I think every hand trap here I should be somewhat playable against the deck, because Memento can play through 1 or 2 hand traps, but it's not fantastic. But our opponents here on Memento is unfortunately bricked, and it's not really that bricky of a deck, so it's unfortunate. I remember thinking my hand was not fantastic either, so here I just extinguished, even though I already have Vados in hand, just to see if he'll hand trap it, which he shouldn't, but that's okay. So I set up my fusion trap again, just, going through the lines. Based off how much I searched this fusion trap, you maybe wonder how often you need Ashen to Eternity. It is a lot less important, and it can definitely contribute to brickier hands. Something to think about as we go forward with the deck construction here. It's becoming incredibly apparent as I'm playing these games out how unimportant it is. But yes, hand traps were expected, and I do get stopped on this hero here. And now I do have this other Vados in hand that he knows about. I could fuse with the Extinguished and then add back the field spell, but If I do, there's a good chance he gets Veiled again. So I'm kind of thinking what the best approach is here. If I kind of just set and pass and try to play a bit slow, try trigger the other Vados that way, Ashen of a turn running and play a bit of a long game, or just be more aggressive here. I decide, okay, let's just fuse and try to apply the pressure that way, especially if he bricked. I can kill the Vados and just deal damage, and that might be good enough because I get the double attack here. It's also important to know here that he used Veiler on the hero and not on the Banshee like last time, and I think that makes a big difference. It would have been a lot easier if he had held the Veiler again, but maybe he learned from some missteps in last turn, and I just set up my beater, and I'm like, okay, I have disruption, so hopefully this double attacker with 2900 will just be enough. And I think actually this is a big reason why I forgot about this. The reason why I decided it was worth just fusing away. I already had Ashen for Eternity, so I can use, instead of resource cycling later, I can just add back Vados here, so I'm still able to keep up some flow of resource. And here Dark Blade lines up again with Imperm, and its glaring weakness to effect negation is very, very evident with how this lines up. So here you try to use Gaddock, and I'm pretty sure you can't because it does say by monster effect, and being sent for cost is not a monster effect. So here he's thinking how he plays about this. If he crashes, he can use Momento to revive the Gaddock, which then can back the Dark Blade, but really doesn't do much besides take damage. So he just sets 2 and passes. And I mean, it was clear you probably wouldn't be able to play through this too much, barring maybe the fusion spell, as he really would have played turn 1 if he had the ability to. And I'm thinking how to against this. And again, I don't Vados here in his turn, because if he has ways to play through it, then it's a problem. I'd rather hold the Vados for disruption, and if he actually ends his turn and not just leaves main phase 1 battle phase back to main phase 2, then I'm in a comfortable spot anyways. So you can very much see that concept in motion here, where I'm not trying to maximize value, I'm just trying to play around what he has at the same time. He imperms in the column for Eternity, trying to stop me stealing his monster, as well as shut off the Priestess, but my ability to fuse here is pretty good. Now it's more to know that because I don't have Obsidian, I can't fuse with this Dark Blade, which I thought maybe I could at the time, which would have been nice. But we're still making the an Embers or the Vados fusion with what I have is still very good. I have to dodge the Imperm here. And I'm just double checking the levels on Embers, making sure I can fuse for the Vados fusion. I get it out for the first few times this tournament. I get to nuke up the back row here, as well as establish the negate. I get to force the Priestess through to get Shaman, and that Shaman will also give me back the Obsidian. So then the Obsidian will give me a draw. So the flow of resources here has been established, and I'm in a very good position. The Imperm here is mildly annoying. It means you'll be able to use the Memento Clan again. And then because I thought I'd be killing the Memento Clan with the Vados, I triggered both Vados Factory to nuke his monsters. So now that his field spell lives, he can revive the Gaddock and then revive the Dark Blade. There's a bit of fall for next turn, that's fine. But I'm still able to force the Priestess through to get the Shaman, which will give me another field spell. It'll give me another draw at the end of the turn. So my flow of resources have been fully reestablished, and I am very confident that I can win the game now with the abundance of card advantage, as well as my engine fully intact and just other non-engine disrupts. I proceed to end phase, get my free draw, and now I know his Dark Blade plus one other card, he probably won't be able to deal with anything I have left. Normals the Dark Blade and uses the effect, giving away any information he had in his hand. I now know everything I have to deal with, and this just really isn't a problem. I get to chain the fuse, chain Vados, and what that will accomplish is now I just fuse those away, get the Ember out, and nuke the field. So even though my monster dies, doesn't matter, blow up everything else, and he is done for. We claw our way back from a game 1 loss, and we are moving on to the final round undefeated.
All right, so round 3 is in the books, and just like with the Yu-Gi deck, we are 3-0 going into the final round. So the question is, can we pull off this final round to win locals with Ashen? I am not the most thrilled to have been playing today, though. And this deck is tricky because managing flow resources can be kind of hard. And versus other decks that have a good time at like cycling resources that aren't as super like straightforward as Snake Eye, it's kind of a brain scratcher for me to deal with it, especially decks I'm not like super familiar with the game plan. And while now I know Momento like beyond the base level, I still don't know the deck well enough to know exactly where their critical choke points are. So yeah, but either way, still happy with how that went. Luck was on my side with the last round brick, but 1 round to go. We got this. Maybe we'll win die roll number 1 here, because I think I've lost all 4, right? Or lost all 3 so far. Maybe my memory fails me, but you'll let me know.
In our final round, we are paired up against Assad, the person who I came with, and one of my friends who, if you remember the first Ashen video, he is the person who I tested with to learn the deck the first time. So he should know what the Ashen cards do. He's learned. And I lose the die roll again, so that means we are playing on the back pedal for every single round. And now I don't know if anybody else is playing this tournament. I do know what Assad is playing because I've talked to him plenty of times about it. It's Melodious Snake Eye. And he starts with Ostinato, which is rough because that is the strongest card of the deck. I think I had one hand trap here being Valor, and a Valor refrain because hopefully that cuts him off, but it's really not that much. He gets to make SP or anything else, and if he has any sort of other extenders, then I'm in a rough spot. Makes SP though, which signifies that either he's trying to make a Snake Eye Ash next and throw away the IP or SP as he plays as a way, as like a kind of way to play around Valor, or he just has nothing else. And we see passes, nothing else. So that's a very good sign for us. We can push through just an SP. SP is kind of troublesome, but if we just burn our battle phase to kill it, it's not too much of a problem. And in this deck, the battle phase isn't too important as we're not really killing the... I'm going to get my Fusion Trap. I decide that if he bricks, there's a good chance he has cards like Imperm or Valor face down, especially if he didn't Ash already. So going for the Knight is better because I can clear the field, and then making Embers into Valor is a lot more clean and not nearly as risky. So I attack with the hero here, and then thinking about how I want to go about this next turn, think about if it's worth me fusing away my plays. And I actually decide that it's not worth committing to the Valor that's likely there. And I can make an Embers on his turn while nuking his field with Endlessness here. It's very easy for him to force it out. If he links it away, it'll be kind of a problem as well, though obviously he's not super inclined to link away the Vados, as he'll kind of just lose everything he committed in order to do so. So then he summons Witch, and that tells me that's the card he drew for turn. It's very unlikely that he had Witch and decided that it wasn't worth summoning on the last turn, especially when he had such an easy way to play around it, with the SP on field playing around other Valors or Imperms, and me obviously not having Ash as I didn't stop the Ostinato. Here he turns stuff to attack points, and the Fusion is about to come out. I get to nuke his 2 monsters, as well as set myself up. Now if he has Imperm, then it means I won't be able to get the field spell back up, which is a bit of a waste of resources, but it's not the end of the world. And if it goes through, then I'm pretty sure I will just be in an entirely dominant position. Fury uses the Imperm, and that's fine. It means I get to clear the field in its full, and I'm in an okay position as we proceed to the next turn. Now here I think I draw Shaman for turn, and that is just fantastic because it means I can get the cycle back going, assuming there's no Valor. There was no Valor, which means his only card was the Impermanence. Now it could be a Mourner still I have to play around, but Valor was safe. I got my flow of resources going, and I am in an extremely good spot. Now I can fuse, I get my flow of resources. Eternity will get me the Ashen back. I get Hero, and he Mourners and Summon. So I'm like, okay, well, I can't chain effective fuse here because he does it on Summon. So maybe I should have got Priestess to avoid this, because if he goes Priestess and he Mourners there, I can chain the effective fuse, and maybe he just wouldn't have done that. I figure it's okay though, because at this point he doesn't have Valor, or I doubt he does. So I still get to go Embers and add back, and it's still more than fine. And get the field spell, get the draw in the end phase. At this point, like my eruptions are all kind of set up, and I have no fear. And he just concedes at that point. Game is over. So now as I'm siding for Snake Eyes, the main thing is hand traps are key. I side in Mourners because I want to just up as much hand traps as possible, and to streamline the engine because cards like Knight may not be too important. Now it's weird because Knight was pretty good there at killing SP, and that made me consider keeping it in, but I feel like ultimately those type of brickier cards can provide to my downfall. I really need to see my cycle of eruptions going. Once I can trigger all my volcanoes, then I'm good. But I have to get to that point, right? I have to shut them off with hand traps and then have my own engine going, and any brick can just stop that from being a reality. All right, so he starts off with Refrain. And yeah, I Valor this because I feel like there's not much way to play through it unless he has Bonfire, and he passes. So I'm like, okay, cool. That's pretty good. Now, I'm pretty sure my hand wasn't fantastic. I do need to rely on Prosperity to get me somewhere. And it resolves, revealing these 6 cards in my deck. And I think I actually just didn't have a way to get my Field Spell. And I look at here, and there's still no way to get Field Spell. I can get Vados to hand, unless he plays a Field Spell that isn't going to do too much. So I get Extinguished here, in case maybe he'll draw me. It's not a big deal, or he'll Ash me. I do have Call By to force it through, but this doesn't do much. I'm thinking, like, I can't do anything here. I decide not to Extinguish, just in case that I can try use it as, like, a hand trap bait on the next turn if I draw, like, Awakening. And then, yeah, maybe that'll just be, like, the best bait. But obviously, it's risky. Now, also, it means if I draw a Power Monster, like if I draw Vados, I can search a second one and then fuse with it. Normal's popular here. I can't assume it's the card he drew because he had 2 normal summons, then that's very reasonable. And when he wants it, it's clear. Okay, that's the card he drew for turn. That gives me good information on what he potentially has left. Makes SP, it's the trigger. And this is looking really rough because now if he witches, then I won't have a great way to stop this. I decided that if the witch resolves, I lose anyway, so I have to Mourner. He can't protect it from resolving by using Little Knight, but if he does that, he'll likely have no cards face up to send off the original. This is still really bad for me, but it pretty much guarantees that I have to do something this next turn or I lose. But I buy myself a turn this way, and maybe it'll be enough. So yeah, he tags them out. He won't deal damage this turn, but it means this next turn will be my last. If I can't kill him on this next turn, it is over. Or kill him at least at follow-up. I draw Ash for turn, and it's just nothing. I activate Extinguish because, like, okay, maybe the game plan here is summon the fusion monster, attack twice, he has no monsters in hand, and then he can't use original. That is like all I can do. So I set up the fusion play, and then I met with D-Barrier, and I'm like, huh? I guess my deck is kind of a fusion deck, so I cut off there, and I'm like, all right, well, it wasn't even a good play, but it was my only play, so that kind of seals the fate. He normal summons another refrain, and yeah, I'm just very, very out of there. There is no chance of winning this game. I have the Ash for original now, because it's the card I drew for turn, so I have somewhat of a way to stay in the game, and maybe I can live, especially because I didn't take damage last turn clearing the field. But now with the Melodious cards, he can get up a lot more resources and do quite a lot. What's important to know here is that with the Melodious cards, he can put bodies up and get to Banshee. Because he's already used a normal summon, all he can get is Poplar. The Poplar can't get originals in Grave, and if even he puts it back when wanted, he can't use it again this turn. But he's not going to use the Temple unless he makes a misplay. But either way, it's still kind of rough because he's setting up a lot of bodies in play that ultimately are going to be kind of hard to deal with. Here he gets the Poplar out, and he decides he just wants to set up the bodies rather than the follow-up. At this point, he'll have the 4 bodies in play, including a Link 2. So he essentially has 5 Link bodies, or with the Baka reviving one, 6 Link bodies. So he can do quite a bit. He can make the Hida, get another Link body in play, and it's really clear that he can establish all is needed for an OTK. Now, if he goes for a Raging Phoenix OTK, however, instead of like a just attack or access code to play, then I have Callbind the Grave to mitigate it. So I'm just going to be patient. Maybe he makes a mistake here and I get another turn. Not that I know how I can really deal with this on the backswing, but I have to try. Here he attacks with everything, leaves me quite low, and thankfully I didn't take damage this game yet, so I have some of my points remaining. And then in the battle phase, he uses Atlantis to pop, and I have to chain it here because if he'll pop the fire and he'll pop the call by. So I chain the call by. I hit the Raging Phoenix. I'm able to stay alive, and whatever good does me, I get one more turn. But even though I get another turn, his main phase 2 plays deck lockdown, which can only assume he drew turn 1 but didn't play because he needed it to keep going on the next turn himself. So all right, man. Like I probably would have lost anyways, but you got me, man. Deck lockdown. How fun. Now going for game 3. I can't get too ahead of myself, even though I go first versus Snake Eye. It is rough. It is the best deck of the format, even if Melodious maybe isn't the best variant of it, in my opinion. The Snake Eye cards are still incredible, and the second they get going, it is really hard for almost any deck to keep up. So it is going to be my job to make sure that doesn't happen, and Volcanoes are enough to keep it at bay. Commence our final duel of the entire tournament here with Awakening of Vaudeo. A great start because it gets everything set up by itself. This is the standard full combo to set up our Eruption loop, assuming he has no hand traps, which is unlikely in a Snake Eye deck. So I give him the Obsidian, which turns off Imperm, as well as when I summon Vados, it'll also turn off Imperm. So now Imperm is not going to be a threat rest of the turn. I summon Hero here because, for one, this will check from Mourner immediately, but also now, if he has a way to stop a Priestess or whatever that threatens to search another Obsidian, which I don't have another of, then I'll still be able to special from the deck, and this card just won't be stuck in my hand. We get Priestess out to keep the loop going, and it's met with the Veiler, so I'm like, okay, that is somewhat to be expected, and I'm thinking what the best course of action is here. I special again with this hero, but I don't have enough Grave for Shaman to use its ability. I'm thinking, what level 4 do I want to burn here? I decided to rather keep the Shaman in deck, so I'll use the second Priestess. I don't mind getting out of the deck and get the Banshee here. So here I add Shaman instead because I don't really need another Vados. I already have the Extinguished in hand, so this gives me the Vados to hand, and it's very clear that I have several ways to access Obsidian, and he's going to be in a bit of a hard time. So now I can activate the Obsidian, and I still now that I have enough Pyros and Grave for Shaman, I could summon it now, and then if I wanted to, I could play Obsidian on top of Obsidian and convert the second Obsidian into a draw. So that's kind of going to be my next question in terms of what's worth doing. At this point, I have 2 unknowns in my hand, and I have to decide if it's worth the 1 extra draw or the follow-up with Obsidian. I decided it's worth holding follow-up because if he draws an Ash for turn, I want to have continual flow of Obsidians still in play. Here we go, Snake Eye Ash, and one of the best parts about this matchup and one of the only good parts of this matchup is they're already pyros. So I don't need Obsidian on my turn to turn them all pyros to fuse with them, because now I get to fuse away his monsters and keep him fully at bay. So now I'm thinking here what the best course of action is here. I can make embers with his monsters, or I could fuse away the Vados as well and make the fusion Vados. What this would accomplish is setting up the negate that I can send an Ashen card to negate an effect. I haven't done that all tournament yet, but it is a solid effect, so I think it's worth setting up. It's important to note here that knowing he's playing Melodious, I do want to keep a card in his field at all times. That way he can't activate Ostinato. So I activate the Vados immediately, putting in the defense. He can't turn it to attacking, threaten to crash it, which is nice. It's a newly summoned one. Also now he can't Ostinato me. And then after all this negate is set up, I still have Mourner and Ash in my hand. And because I have these two hand traps is why I felt like the follow-up is more important over the draw. And then I also summon the Knight to keep him off of any Pyro, the threat of linking off the Vados. And without the Obsidian, it doesn't matter. It still pops all the Pyros. So he can't activate Ostinato. I have Ash for potential Sinful Spoil. I am very set up. And he's conceded in the spot. We're able to defeat the Snake Eye Menace pretty decisively in that game 3.
All right, winning locals tonight. We got a ton of packs, and then we got our entry packs as well. So let's crack and see what we get. An Ashen card. that's only fitting. And we got okay, that's one of the best secret rares. Although it doesn't say much in this set. This card's all right. Nightmare Apprentice. Haven't built anything with this yet, but if you guys want to see something with that card, let me know. This pack we got. I wish I had this last week when I brought this to locals. But that is pretty cool. That is pretty cool. All right, anyways, I don't think we can pull anything else. Oh, never mind. That was just 3 crazy packs in a row. Okay. This is a pretty good locals. Pretty good locals experience. Oh, okay. I don't think those are worth much, but the second secret, can't say no to that. Wow, that almost was like a full box. Honestly, it was just better than a full box. I think I got like 16 packs? I don't know how many packs I won. I guess I can count how many supers I got. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17. 16 packs, one for entry, and then one of these for entry. But yeah, that was pretty good for just over half a box. Got this, this, and this. Yeah, pretty good. Can't say no to that. Let's go! We were victorious with Ashen 4-0, which means we are first place at today's local tournament. Had a tough opponent, Assad, who came with me to locals tonight, and Snake Eye's a pretty hard deck to beat, but weird game. Not the best hands on either of our behalves. Both strong, kind of awkward, but that's what happens when both our decks are just loaded with a ton of hand traps. And yeah, Ashen is the deck that got me my first locals win in probably half a decade. That's crazy to think about. Anyways, yes, I'll see you guys back at home, and we'll go over the tournament's experience.
All right, and that's it. We ended up going 4-0 at locals with Ashen. We were victorious, first place, and super excited about that. I hadn't been able to get first at locals in a while because the last two I played with the Yugi deck and with Rince's deck both ended X1. So far in the channel, this is our first flawless locals victory. Now, this deck was super cool. While it wasn't anything absolutely brilliant, I did have a lot of fun playing it. It wasn't half bad, and despite a lot of the support seeming rather random, it's not like Testina. There were clear intentions here, and there is a game plan that is quite cool. It is not the most powerful thing in the world, but it has power behind it. It can kill over the course of 2 turns effectively. It can kill in 1 super easily, like a lot of decks can, but over 2 turns, it can. It can set up a constant flow of resources pretty well, and it can also do a decent bit of interruption, as well as doing all these things in a unique method that a lot of the other decks don't do, which has a lot of merit. But what I really love about Ashen is the way you play this deck is very forward thinking. You have to constantly be thinking about clocking your opponent like you would in a traditional, older, slower style game where you want to kill them over 2 turns, while making sure your flow of resources stays intact and it's not weak to your opponent's disruption, while also providing a way to stop your opponent. Like I said in the beginning, it's all these things to be careful of, and this critical thinking skill that's required that makes Ashen a really cool deck. It doesn't play out like a lot of other modern Yu-Gi-Oh decks. So if you find yourself liking the speed of Yu-Gi-Oh, want it a bit slower and a little more alike with some other more traditional tempo-based card games that Yu-Gi-Oh's kind of evolved past, this is that middle ground. for now, that means we close the book on Ashen. I think it's a success, and while this may not be the tier 1 threat that something like Burning Abyss was, this falls in line with a TCG archetype that is playable, has a unique play style, it's competitively viable at regionals or at locals levels, and stretching it at a YCS level, but it has a comprehensive game plan, and it's not bad at it. So until we get more support, whether it be an OCG exclusive in the future that eventually comes here, this deck is probably done for now. I'd put it on par with decks like Plunder Patrol, which, given the right format, can be quite powerful and does have its strengths, albeit not by itself this meta overbearing threat. If you want to see more videos like this and keep analyzing the TCG exclusives, I'm happy to do it with the future ones to come out and keep exploring how well they play. If you like the local vlogs as well, then just let me know. All the feedback is appreciated because I want to do what you guys want to see. And any other deck recommendations or concept videos to talk about, just let me know down below. Other than that, I will see you all next time. Peace.